Well, good morning, everybody. This is Duncan Modishead on behalf of IMSM. This is a webinar on the quality management system ISO 9001:2015. So in this webinar, we'll be looking at the ISO 9001:2015 quality management system. So first of all, we'll do a brief overview. Then we'll look at the approach it's taking, which is a bit of a change from the 2008 version, which was more procedure-based, and we'll be looking at the process approach just briefly. And then we'll be looking at take a look at the clause structure, the general structure of the standard itself, and other standards which are following that, which use the similar clause structure. Then we'll look at an overview of the clauses just briefly, and then finally, then we'll just see what can IMSM do to help you implement this 9001:2015 in your organization. So first of all, just a brief overview of the standard itself. So it's an international standard that defines the minimum requirements for a company or an organization's quality management system. So the company's quality management system we're looking at the holistic approach for the company. So the QMS is not just about people think about quality itself, but it comprises everything, which is the organization's policies, the procedures, and other internal requirements in order to ensure that customer requirements are met with consistency. And I think that is one of the key pieces. It can be applied to all types and sizes of organizations, so it's relevant no matter whether you're just even a sole trader or a multinational organization. And it is either product or service based, so it doesn't matter whether you manufacture an actual physical product or you provide a service. This 9001:2015 standard is relevant for your organization. One of the key pieces within that, of course, is then the inclusion of processes for continual improvement of the system, and that is one of the key pieces, and I think I'll be touching on that many times throughout this presentation. So the management system, the ISO 9001:2015 management system, it adopts a process approach. So a process is just the transformation of some inputs into a system, and then you change those and you create outputs, which then are fed into other parts of the system as inputs. So organizations have to deal with multiple inputs and outputs and linked processes. And as we say, with the linkage, then an output from one process often forms the input to the next. Now, one of the ways that I like to think about this, it's a very easy way, is to take a food analogy. And if I think about the way that I make my porridge here at home, right, you could come into my home and you could audit me on my porridge making, because I do the same thing over and over again. Right? I take my 1 cup of porridge, put it in the pan. I then take 5 cups of milk now, and put that in the pan, and then I bring it slowly to the boil, and the result is the same all the time. This is where I emphasize the consistency part in the description of the standard. And my wife, on the other hand, cooks differently. She'll just take the oats and just pour enough in the pan as she thinks is required, and then she'll take the milk and then pour as much milk into the pan as is required. And then when she cooks it, then it comes out different every time. Now, this is not to say within this domestic environment that either method is better than the other, right? But from a business and an organization's perspective, the requirement that you understand exactly what the customer is getting and that you can predict what the customer is going to get is important. And you need to need to be able to ensure that what you provide to your customers is exactly what you have designed your system to produce, and you want those products and or services to be provided to your customer on a consistent and predictable basis. So if I take this and I put it into then the plan, do, check, act part of the process-based methodology, then we can see that the inputs into this, and let's take a food analogy again, because it's relatively simple to it's easy to picture. If we think about maybe a restaurant, then so we understand, we would look at and think about our customers here, and then we think about the objectives. It's in order to provide a customer with a wonderful dining experience, of course, and then what are the risks, and what the risks are, competitive risks, of course, and those kind of things. And then I'll just run through this very briefly, but then what we're looking at, our resources are then the staff and the training that we have. And then here we have the performance evaluation, which is then asking our customers what they think of the food at the end, and then we take that feedback here, and then we maybe adjust what we do, and then create adjust the ingredients that go into the food in order then to take into account the customer's feedback. So here is where we plan and we buy and purchase all the ingredients. Here is where we have all the staff and we have the recipes, and we do we plan it here with all the ingredients. We do it here by utilizing the process provided by the recipe. Our performance evaluation is where we ask our customers what they thought of the product, and then the improvement is, and that's the check part, and then the act is where we then take this feedback and adjust our ingredients and or recipe, and then we just keep on moving around this circle all the time, and the result of this is our product or service, in this particular case the food that goes out to our customers. The ISO 9001:2015 also then is based around the key management principles of customer focus, and that is one of the key pieces. So you're always trying to ensure that what you provide to the customer is, as I've mentioned, consistent and predictable, and that then you are continually polling your customer to make sure that you understand what they want and understand if there is any improvements that you should be making. Key to the standard, and this is also a difference between the 2008 version and the 2015 version, is that the leadership has to take a more proactive role within the quality management system. I mean, in the past, I think it was quite well known that the upper management would pass this down to say, you just deal with it and just make sure you get certification, and then then that was it. But the 2015 version of the standard says that the leadership needs to be involved, and they need to be seen to be involved. The management principle of engagement of people, of course, and engaged staff within your organization obviously then drives the business forward much better than disengaged staff, of course. And you want to engage, though, not just within your own staff, but then you want to engage with your suppliers and your customers. So this 9001:2015 standard is promoting engagement of all the people who would be involved, all your interested parties, if you like, within that could affect or that are affected by your organization. And as I mentioned, we've already talked about the process approach, which is one of the management principles on which this 9001 standard is based. And then one of the key pieces, in my opinion, is that the improvement part. And then the standard has a big emphasis on improvement, and that, of course, then an organization that stands still will generally be overtaken by its competitors. So there's always this drive for improvement, and the 9001:2015 standard is always promoting improvement in everything you do. I think one of the things that companies don't realize is that they are actually doing most of the things that the 9001:2015 standard requires. And generally, if you are a successful business, then you must be doing things correctly. One of the pieces, though, that the standard requires is this evidence. And what it is that the 9001 standard says, yes, okay, we know that you're doing a great job, but what you need to do is to provide evidence that you are doing that. And so it's evidence that if you have a great set of procedures, then it's evidence that you are actually working to those procedures. And so what it is, I put it in a very simple way, that you document what you do and you do what you document. And so in that case, then you can gather evidence to show external parties that we are in control of our processes. We have a great business, we have a great product, we have a consistent product because we work to our processes and our procedures, and we can prove it. And I think that is the key piece that the 9001 standard is doing for an organization. And by gathering this information and storing all this information, you can then obviously make better decisions, because you are basing your decisions on facts that you have gathered from within the organization. And all of these principles then allow you to better manage your relationships with your customers, with your suppliers, and then, of course, with your staff. Another change in the 9001:2015 standard is this introduction of what they call a high-level structure, and it has a name, Annex SL. But this Annex SL is just it doesn't have any specific. It doesn't have any specific reference. It's just the next annex after SK. But it has a set structure, which is each of the clauses now for more recent standards follows this same high-level structure. So the clause 1 is the scope of that particular standard. Clause 2 is normative references for the particular standard. Clause 3 is terms and definitions. And then we get into the real meat of the standard itself, which is clause 4, where it starts with the context of the organization, and then it looks at clause 5. It looks at the leadership and the requirements for that. Clause 6 looks at planning. Clause 7 looks at support. Clause 8 looks at operation. Clause 9 looks at the performance evaluation, and then clause 10 looks at improvement. And if we go back to this, here we have then leadership right in the middle of this plan, do, check, act cycle, and this methodology. And then, as I mentioned, then we have the various clauses around this plan, do, check, act methodology, which then represent those clauses of the standard. Other standards, as I mentioned, also now follow this. The 14,001 standard follows this. The 45,001 standard now follows this. 50,001, and so the later versions follow this standard. And so if you have multiple standards, then it does allow you to merge the standards into one, and then, of course, then improve and make it easier for you to manage these standards. So let's start with a brief overview of each of the clauses and see what it might mean and what it's asking from the organization. So clause 4 is context of the organization. So what it says is you need to look at those positive and negative factors that can affect the organization. So basically you do a personal analysis. It says you need to understand the needs and expectations of interested parties, and you need to develop the scope of the management system. So the scope, let's just take that to start with. It says just what is the company, what does it do, what is the area in which it operates, and what does it produce, and are there any parts of the 9001 management system that are not applicable to that standard? And this standard allows the organization to say this part of the standard is not applicable to us. So first of all, then, if from an external auditing perspective. If when an external audit comes in, the key documents, some of the key documents, and these are not an exhaustive list, but the key ones would be, as an external auditor, I would be looking for this internal and external issues list. And so the results of your personal analysis. They're looking at the needs and expectations of interested parties. So these would be, for example, what the customers are looking for, which is consistent and high quality products, of course. Then other interested parties would be, for example, your compliance requirements from, say, HSE or the Environment Agency or whatever. So just to see a list of those, and then looking at the scope. So you might have something like ABC Limited, based in London, provide high quality glazed products to customers throughout the United Kingdom. Okay, so that then covers the scope. There may be some parts of the standard which are not relevant or not applicable, and that might be if you don't do design and development there, then you could say that clause 7.5.1 is not applicable. Sorry, clause 8.3 is not applicable, as the company does not do design and development. Or you could say that clause 7.1.5 is not applicable if you don't have calibration within your organization. And there is one other about if you don't happen to provide any warranty services or anything once the product or service leaves the organization, then you could say perhaps that 8.5.5, which is post-delivery activities, is not applicable to the organization as well. So but this is all stated within the scope statement, and that can normally and usually be found on your certificate. Clause 5 looks at leadership. So you need to, the standard says you need to demonstrate leadership and commitment to the quality management system, that to show that you have determined and understand your customer statutory and regulatory requirements, that is what the customer wants, what the regulatory agencies want, and if there are any other compliance requirements. That you need to understand, that you have determined and understood the risks and opportunities facing the organization. It says you need to establish a quality policy, and it needs to assign roles and responsibilities. But so in general, this then means that you need to have your quality policy, which the statement of what your quality management system wants to achieve, and then many organizations have this in one form or another, and it just needs some perhaps just a brief adjustment to make it applicable to 9001, or so it satisfies the requirements of 9001. And then of course you need to have some kind of organization chart in a kind of a structural way. It doesn't necessarily have to have names, but just to have your the structure, the reporting lines within that. So it's more of a structure than a structure with names in there. Then clause 6 looks at planning. It's where you need to implement actions to address the risks and opportunities facing the organization. So you have done a SWOT analysis. And then from that SWOT analysis, you have created your risk register, which is another of key documents that are required by the standard. Clause 6 also requires that you have quality objectives and that you have some kind of plan in order to achieve them. So you have your quality objectives as a document, and that would be something that I would look for as an external auditor. And also then to check that those quality objectives are SMART objectives, so that they are specific, they're measurable, they're achievable and agreed, that they are relevant, and that they are time-bound. Okay, so then another one then, of course, we've mentioned this, that we would look for this organization chart as well. So then clause 7 looks at support, and this is then that you have the appropriate infrastructure and the environment and resources necessary for the organization, and that you have your competency and your staff have appropriate training, and that the organization itself then is aware that you have a quality management system, and that there is something called a ISO 9001:2015 quality management system in operation within your organization, and that the staff within the organization know that it is there and understand what it is. And then you need to ensure that you have all of your documented information and all of the documented information required by the standard, that you collect that and control it. So as I mentioned, there are some parts of the standard that may or may not be applicable. So you need to have a calibration register if you have equipment within your organization that is calibrated. You should then have your training matrix, which is or your staff members and the appropriate training that you have determined that is required, and that you monitor that to who needs particular training at particular times. And then of course you need to keep records of training that they may have had during the time that they are in the organization. Then you need to look at your IT and your documents and your record security. So you need to have some kind of feedback that your IT systems are being kept secure, and that you have appropriate backups in order that you can recover from maybe some cyber attacks that seem to be quite common nowadays. Clause 8 looks at operations side of your organization. So it's about traceability of actions throughout the organization. So it's what happens to the customer order from the time that it's placed until the time that it is delivered. So you're looking at the steps that are taken in order to monitor the progress of that order as it goes and as it makes its way through your system, from the input at the receipt of the purchase order from the customer to the output, which is the final shipment of that to your customer. So you have a design and development process. You need to be fully documented, of course, and that will be checked by an external auditor as well, and to show that externally provided products and services are controlled. So basically you have an approved supplier list, and then you would have some set criteria for your suppliers to fulfill in order for them to remain as approved suppliers, and that those points would be monitored, and so you need to show that you're doing that as well. So then if we move on to clause 9, which is the check part of our plan, do, check, act methodology, and this is all about performance evaluation, and this is looking at the KPIs, which include your customer perceptions. The standard also says you need to plan, establish, implement, and maintain an internal audit program, and it also says that the top manager must review the quality management system at planned intervals by having some kind of management review. So the key documents from this part are basically your standard KPIs. Maybe some, that would be within your management review. You would discuss all of these KPIs, which include, of course, the quality objectives. But so from that, then of course, what you are required to have is your management review meeting minutes. So as an external auditor, that's a very important document that I would require to see. You'd need to have an internal audit program document, and then you would need to show that you are following that internal audit program, and by performing your internal audits, and that you have those internal audit reports available to show that those have actually been done as evidence. So clause 10 is all about improvement, and so the standard says you need to select opportunities for improvement, and also then that you need to control and manage your non-conformities. So within this clause, then some of the key documents are, you need to note the improvement opportunities that you are following, have those documented somewhere. It could be within the management review meeting minutes. And then also then you would need to have some form of non-conformance register where you document your non-conformances together with the root cause analysis and corrective actions of each of those non-conformances. So that's brief overview of the clauses themselves, and then let's look at where IMSM would fit in. Now, IMSM has worked with over 12,000 organizations globally and has a very well-practiced approach to implementing management systems. And they do support every step of the way. And as I was a customer of IMSM, and IMSM helped to transition the company I was working for from the 2008 standard to the 2015 standard. So my personal background, and what my personal experience was that when I was in charge of operations in a small enterprise, then it was quite difficult, or the task appeared quite difficult to make the transition within the busy schedules of the company I was working with. And so IMSM came along and offered to review the current 2008 system and then transition it and provide the documentation for the 2015 standard. So to provide all the templates and all the documents, and just basically move from one 2008 version to the 2015 standard, taking all of the information within the 2008 standard and moving it into the 2015 format. And so for me, this was ideal. It meant that I personally didn't have to get involved in doing it all myself. And people who knew what they were doing did it for me. And it was a very smooth transition, in fact, and it went very well. I wasn't the only company in the running for doing this. I looked at other companies, but the consulting part of the offering from IMSM was one of the key reasons why we went with them in order for them to transition our systems. And so the way that this works, even if you don't have a system in place, is that IMSM will come in and perform a gap analysis, and IMSM will look at any current systems and highlight any areas that need attention. And then IMSM will produce the manuals for the 9001-2015 standard based on a set of templates and the information which you provide to them at the gap analysis stage. And then the new set of manuals will be presented to you as a customer, and then you will start working with the manual. And then after an agreed time that you work to the manuals, then a certification audit will be carried out, and upon successful completion, then a certification will be given. And so for me, I've worked on both sides. I've been a customer of IMSM, and I then perform gap analyses, and I also then produce the documentation based on the templates from which are provided by IMSM. And the whole system is designed to be very smooth and interactive. And the goal of as when I come in and do a gap analysis, is then the goal is to get all the information that is necessary at that one meeting by asking a series of questions. And then from the information that is provided, the manuals and all of the other templates are prepared and then given over to the organization to work with. So that then, in a nutshell, is just a brief overview of the actual management system, 9001 management system itself, and then the implementation and how IMSM can help you with implementing the implementation itself. So, having gone through all that, I would now like to ask if anybody has any questions. So I'll be very happy to take questions from